Good evening, dear travelers. Welcome back to Snug as a Bug. I am Atticus, and tonight we're setting off on a journey through the enchanting landscapes of ancient Ireland. Let yourself sink into your bed, letting go of the day's weight with a deep breath in and out. You are safe, relaxed, and ready to explore the mystical world of Celtic legends. Tonight's soothing tales will take you through the beautiful romance of the Wooing of Étaín and the eternal love shared in the legend of Oisín and Niamh. We'll walk the misty shores of the Morrígan, the goddess of fate, and finally, we will encounter the mysterious beauty of the enchanted deer of Slieve Gullion. Before we dive into the ancient Celtic legends, let's take a moment to fully relax and prepare for this peaceful journey through the magic of Ireland. Gently close your eyes and allow your body to sink deeper into your bed, feeling completely supported and cradled by the softness beneath you. Let your breath flow naturally as you take a long, slow inhale, and then exhale, letting go of any tension you might still be carrying. With each breath, feel your body growing lighter, your mind quieter, and your heart calmer. Imagine now that you are standing on a lush green hillside, the gentle breeze carrying the scent of wildflowers and fresh rain. Above you, the sky is a rich twilight, painted in soft hues of pink and gold as the sun dips behind the rolling hills. You feel the warmth of the land beneath your feet, the soft grass cushioning each step as you wander deeper into the heart of Ireland's ancient forests and valleys. The air is filled with the soft murmurs of the trees, as though they are whispering secrets of old. In the distance, you hear the faint sound of a harp playing a slow melodic tune, its notes blending with the rustling leaves and the distant call of birds. The world around you feels timeless, a place where myths and magic are alive. Now you are ready to journey into the rich and wondrous tales of Ireland's Celtic past. Let go and allow these ancient stories to guide you into a peaceful and restful sleep. The Wooing of Étaín, Chapter 1, The Birth of Étaín. In the ancient days of Ireland, when the mists still clung to the hills and the world was alive with magic, there lived a woman of unparalleled beauty and grace. Her name was Étaín. She was born not of mortals, but of the Tuatha De Danann, the divine race of beings who ruled over the land with magic and wisdom. The Tuatha De Danann were known for their beauty, their power, and their eternal youth, but even among them, Étaín stood out like a shining star. Étaín's beauty was legendary, so radiant that the sun seemed dim in comparison to her golden hair, which shimmered like fields of ripe wheat under the summer sky. Her eyes were the deepest blue, mirroring the seas that surrounded the island of Ireland, and her voice was as soft and melodic as the wind that whispered through the trees. But Étaín was not only beautiful, she was kind-hearted, gentle, and wise beyond her years. Her laughter was said to heal sorrow, and her presence alone brought joy to all who beheld her. Étaín lived among the Tuatha De Danann in their hidden realm of Brunabwana, where the rivers flowed with silver and the trees bore fruit in every season. The otherworldly beauty of the land was matched only by the people who inhabited it, and Étaín was the jewel of that realm. Her parents, though unknown to the mortal world, were figures of great respect among the Tuatha De, and they doted on their daughter with all the love and care that could be offered in such a magical land. But Étaín's destiny was not to remain hidden in the otherworld forever. for her beauty and charm would soon draw the attention of men, both mortal and divine. Chapter 2. The Love of Midir. Far across the otherworldly realms, there lived a noble king of the Tuatha de Danann named Midir. Midir was a powerful figure, a ruler whose wisdom and strength were renowned among the gods. He was a man of great stature, with eyes that gleamed like molten silver and hair the color of burnished copper. He was known for his intelligence, but also for his passion. Though Midir had many lands and servants at his command, his heart yearned for something more. He yearned for love. One day, while traveling through the lands of Brúnaboinn, Midir beheld Étaín for the first time. It was as if the world had shifted in that moment, and all the beauty of the heavens paled in comparison to the sight of her. Midir's heart was captured instantly, and he knew that he had found the love he had been searching for. He approached her with all the grace and respect due to a woman of her standing. Étaín, in turn, was charmed by Midir's kind words and noble bearing. He spoke to her of the stars and the rivers, of the ancient forests and the hills of Ireland, weaving a tapestry of words that reflected his deep love for the land and the people within it. Over time, Étaín found herself drawn to Midir, not just for his power and strength, but for the gentleness that lay beneath. Their courtship was one of laughter, song, and long walks beneath the ancient trees of Brúnaboinn. Midir treated Étaín with the utmost respect, never pushing her, never demanding more than she was willing to give. He wooed her with gifts, not of gold or jewels, but of rare flowers that only bloomed in the hidden corners of the otherworld, and stories that spanned the ages. Eventually, Étaín's heart softened to Midir, and she fell in love with him just as deeply as he had with her. Their love was a radiant thing, full of joy and mutual admiration, and soon they were married in a grand ceremony attended by all the Tuatha de Danann. The two lived happily in Midir's palace for a time, their days filled with love and laughter. But as with all great loves, theirs would soon face a trial, one that would test the very strength of their bond. Chapter 3. The Jealousy of Fuamnach. Before Midir had fallen in love with Étaín, he had been married to another, a powerful and dangerous woman named Fuamnach. Fuamnach was a sorceress of great skill, a woman whose magical abilities were known and feared throughout the lands. She had loved Midir deeply, but theirs had been a marriage of convenience, one forged out of necessity rather than affection. When Midir took Étaín as his new bride, Fuamnach's heart burned with jealousy and hatred. She could not stand the thought of another woman taking her place in Midir's heart, and she vowed to do whatever it took to destroy their happiness. Her magic was ancient and formidable, and she spent many nights alone, weaving spells of vengeance and cursing the name of Étaín. One fateful evening, while Midir was away, Fuamnach confronted Étaín. With words dripping in venom, she cast a spell upon the unsuspecting woman, transforming her into a shimmering pool of water. The water gathered itself into a tiny pool on the floor, and before Étaín could comprehend what had happened, Fuamnach struck again, this time transforming her into a delicate butterfly. The butterfly, with wings of iridescent gold and silver, fluttered helplessly around the room, her mind still that of Étaín, but her body now frail and defenseless. Fuamnach smiled coldly at her work, satisfied that Midir's new love was no more than an insect. Yet even in this fragile form, Étaín was still Étaín. She maintained her beauty, her essence, and her resilience. As a butterfly, she drifted on the winds of the other world, carried from one corner of the realm to another. Though she was now small and powerless, her spirit remained unbroken. She wandered through forests, over rivers, and across fields, her delicate wings shimmering in the sunlight, her mind yearning for Midir and the life she had lost. For many years, Étaín lived as a butterfly, wandering aimlessly, lost in the vastness of the world. But her fate had not abandoned her entirely, and soon her journey would bring her back to the land of mortals, where her story would take another turn. Chapter 4. Étaín's Journey to Mortality. For what felt like an eternity, Étaín existed in her delicate butterfly form, drifting on the breezes of the other world, yearning to return to her former life with Midir. Despite her fragile state, Étaín's beauty still captivated those who saw her, and wherever she flew, the people of the land would pause and marvel at the shimmering butterfly that seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. But Étaín's journey was far from over. The winds carried her beyond the realms of the Tuatha De Danann and into the mortal world, where she was drawn to the court of Étar, the king of Ulster. Étar's palace was grand, with tall stone towers and wide open courtyards filled with blooming flowers. It was here, in the mortal realm, that Étaín's fate would take its most unexpected turn. One day, as Étaín fluttered through the gardens of Étar's palace, she was drawn toward the queen's chambers. The Queen of Ulster, a kind and gentle woman, was sitting by her window, gazing out over the rolling hills. Étaín, still a butterfly, fluttered through the open window and landed on the queen's shoulder. The queen, struck by the beauty of the butterfly, reached out to touch it. In that moment, Étaín's fate shifted once more. As the queen reached for Étaín, a transformation occurred. Slowly and almost imperceptibly, Étaín's butterfly form dissolved, and she was reborn as a human once more. But this time she was not the Étaín of the Tuatha De Danann. She was reborn into the mortal world as the daughter of the Queen of Ulster, and with no memory of her past life, her love for Midir, or the magic that had once surrounded her. Though Étaín had been reborn into the mortal realm, her beauty and grace were still unmatched. As she grew into womanhood, word of her beauty spread far and wide. Suitors came from all corners of Ireland to seek her hand in marriage, but none could win her heart. For deep within her soul, Étaín still longed for the love she had once shared with Midir, though she could not remember it. Chapter 5. The Mortal King. In the mortal world, Étaín's beauty caught the attention of many, but none were more smitten with her than Eochaid Arem, the High King of Ireland. Eochaid was a powerful ruler, respected by his people and feared by his enemies. He had everything a king could want: wealth, power, and prestige. But there was one thing he lacked: a queen. When Eochaid heard of Étaín's beauty, he became determined to make her his wife. He traveled to Ulster, where he presented himself to Étar the king, and asked for Étaín's hand in marriage. Étar, knowing that Eochaid was the High King, could not refuse. And so Étaín was wed to Eochaid, and became the Queen of Ireland. But though Eochaid adored her, Étaín's heart remained distant. She could not explain the feeling that haunted her, the sense that something, someone, was missing from her life. In her dreams, she saw glimpses of a man with copper-colored hair and eyes like molten silver, a man whose face stirred something deep within her soul. But each time she reached for him, he faded into the mists, leaving her alone in the darkness. Despite her feelings of unease, Étaín was a kind and dutiful queen. She ruled beside Éochaid with grace and wisdom, and the people of Ireland came to love her as much as they loved their king. Yet, even in the midst of her royal life, Étaín could not escape the pull of her past, for Midir too had not forgotten her. Chapter 6. Midir's Return. Far away in the other world, Midir had never ceased to love Étaín. He had searched for her tirelessly, wandering through the realms of the Tuatha De Danann and beyond, hoping to find some trace of his lost love. When he learned that she had been reborn in the mortal world, his heart swelled with hope. Midir knew that he had to see Étaín again, to remind her of the love they had shared. But the barrier between the other world and the mortal realm was not easily crossed. He needed a way to enter Étaín's life without arousing suspicion. And so, Midir devised a plan. Disguising himself as a wandering nobleman, Midir made his way to the court of Éochaid, where he presented himself as a guest. The king, unaware of Midir's true identity, welcomed him with open arms. Midir was careful, biding his time, waiting for the right moment to approach Étaín. Finally, the moment came. During a grand feast held in Éochaid's hall, Midir approached the king and proposed a game of Fitchel, a strategic board game beloved by kings and warriors alike. Éochaid, always eager for a challenge, agreed. They played for hours, each move more cunning than the last, until Midir made a wager. "If I win this game, you must grant me one request," Midir said, his eyes gleaming. Éochaid, confident in his skills, agreed. But Midir was no ordinary opponent, and with one final decisive move, he won the game. Éochaid, bound by his word, asked what Midir desired. "I ask for nothing more than a single kiss from your queen," Midir said, his voice soft but firm. Éochaid, though uneasy, could not refuse. He granted Midir's request, and in that moment, as Midir and Étaín's lips met, the spell of forgetfulness that had clouded Étaín's mind was broken. In a rush, Étaín remembered everything: her life as one of the Tuatha De Danann, her love for Midir, and the magic that had once filled her world. Her heart swelled with joy and sorrow, for she now stood between two worlds: the mortal world she had come to know, and the other world where her true love waited. Chapter 7. The Escape and Final Farewell. Éochaid, realizing that Midir's request had been more than it seemed, grew suspicious. He watched as Étaín's demeanor changed, her gaze lingering on Midir with a look that was not mere courtesy. The king's heart filled with jealousy and fear, for he knew that he could lose his beloved queen to this mysterious stranger. Midir, knowing that time was running out, approached Étaín in secret. He told her of his undying love, of the years he had searched for her, and of the life they had once shared. Étaín, her heart torn between the two men, listened in silence. "I cannot stay in this world, Étaín," Midir said, "but I will not force you to come with me. The choice is yours." Étaín, though her love for Midir was as strong as ever, knew that her life had changed. She had been reborn in the mortal world, and though she longed to return to the other world, she could not abandon the people who had come to depend on her. With tears in her eyes, Étaín made her choice. "I will stay," she whispered, "but know that I will love you for all eternity, Midir." Midir, though heartbroken, understood. He kissed Étaín one last time, a kiss filled with the bitter sweetness of their love, and then he vanished into the mists, leaving Étaín to live out her days in the mortal world. Étaín remained queen beside Eochaid, but the memory of Midir never left her. She ruled with grace and wisdom, and though her heart longed for the other world, she knew that her place was now among the mortals. The Legend of Oisín and Niamh. Chapter 1. Oisín, son of the Fianna. In the misty hills of ancient Ireland, under the shadow of towering oaks and along the banks of clear, babbling brooks, there lived a warrior unlike any other. His name was Oisín, son of the legendary hero Fionn mac Cúailnge, and he was one of the greatest of the Fianna, a band of fearless warriors known for their strength, honor, and love of adventure. Oisín, whose name meant Little Deer, had grown up in the wilds of Ireland, learning the ways of the land and the code of the Fianna. With hair like the golden sunlight and eyes the color of the sea, Oisín was as striking as he was courageous. Though known for his strength in battle, Oisín was also beloved for his poetry. His songs and verses could stir the hearts of his comrades, speaking of the beauty of Ireland and the adventures they had shared. His voice, it was said, could make the stones weep and the rivers sigh. Oisín's life among the Fianna was one of honor and camaraderie. He fought beside his father, Fionn, and the other great warriors, facing countless dangers and triumphs. Together, they defended Ireland from invaders, hunted in the forests, and shared stories by the fire. Oisín was content with his life, for there was no greater glory than standing alongside his fellow warriors in battle. But Oisín's fate was about to change in ways he could never have imagined, for even the bravest of men cannot resist the call of love when it comes, and the other world was watching him. Chapter 2. The Arrival of Niamh. One bright morning, as the Fianna rested on the green hills of Knocknarea after a successful hunt, something extraordinary happened. The sky, which had been clear and blue, was suddenly filled with a shimmering light, brighter than the sun itself. The warriors shielded their eyes, squinting up at the sky in confusion. And then from the glowing light there emerged a figure, a woman of such breathtaking beauty that the men of the Fianna were struck speechless. She rode upon a horse as white as snow, its mane and tail flowing like silk in the wind. The woman's hair was the color of spun gold, cascading down her back in waves, and her eyes gleamed like stars. She wore a gown of shimmering silver, adorned with jewels that sparkled in the sunlight, and her presence seemed to command the very air around her. This was Niamh of the golden hair, a princess from Tir na Nog, the land of eternal youth, a place where time flowed differently and the beauty of the world never faded. She had come from her enchanted realm to find Oisín, for she had heard of his bravery, his wisdom, and his beauty. Her heart had been captured by tales of the warrior poet, and now she sought to bring him back with her to the land of immortality. As Niamh's horse descended upon the hillside, the warriors of the Fianna stood in awe, their hands resting on the hilts of their swords, unsure whether to bow in respect or prepare for some otherworldly challenge. But Niamh's eyes were fixed solely on Oisín. "Oisín, son of Fionn mac Cúailnge," she called in a voice like the softest music, "I have come for you." Oisín, though surprised by her arrival, felt an undeniable pull toward her. There was something about Niamh that stirred his soul, a connection that he could not explain but could not deny. He stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest, and met her gaze. "And why have you come for me, fair Niamh?" he asked, his voice steady, though his heart raced with anticipation. Niamh smiled, her beauty almost too much to bear. I have come to take you with me to Tir na Nog, the land where no one grows old and sorrow is unknown. There we can live together in eternal happiness, away from the troubles of the mortal world." The warriors of the Fianna gasped at her words. Tir na Nog was a land of legend, a place where only a chosen few could enter. To be invited to such a realm was a rare and extraordinary honor, but it came at a cost, leaving behind the mortal world forever. Oisín stood silent for a moment, his thoughts torn between the life he had known and the promise of eternal joy with Niamh. But as he gazed into her eyes, he felt his resolve weaken. The life of a warrior, though noble, was filled with hardship and loss. The thought of living in a place where there was no pain, no aging, and no death was too tempting to resist. "I will go with you, Niamh," Oisín said at last, his voice filled with determination. "I will follow you to Tir na Nog." With a smile of joy, Niamh reached out her hand, and Oisín took it without hesitation. In an instant he leaped onto her white horse, and together they rode off into the sky, leaving the Fianna behind. The warriors watched in awe as Oisín disappeared into the shimmering light, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that they might never see him again. And so Oisín left the world of mortals behind, embarking on a journey to the land of eternal youth, where the beauty of life would never fade. Chapter 3. Tir na Nog. As they crossed the boundaries between the mortal world and the other world, Oisín felt a change in the air around him. The colors of the sky grew more vibrant, the scent of the air sweeter, and the land below seemed to shimmer with an ethereal glow. He and Niamh soared through the clouds on the back of her horse, faster than the wind, leaving behind the green hills of Ireland and entering the realm of Tir na Nog. When they finally descended from the sky, Oisín found himself standing on the shores of a land more beautiful than any he had ever imagined. The grass beneath his feet was a rich, deep green, softer than any he had felt before. The flowers bloomed in a riot of colors, their petals sparkling like gemstones in the sunlight. The trees towered overhead, their leaves rustling in a gentle breeze that carried the scent of sweet fruit. Rivers of crystal-clear water wound through the landscape, and in the distance Oisín could see towering mountains that seemed to touch the sky. Niamh led Oisín through the rolling hills and meadows of Tir na Nog, and as they walked, she showed him the wonders of her world. There were no signs of age or decay, no sickness or suffering. The people they passed were radiant with health and vitality, their faces filled with joy and laughter. Time seemed to stand still in this land, where the seasons never changed, and the sun always shone in the sky. For Oisín, it was as if he had stepped into a dream, a world where the worries and hardships of mortal life could not touch him. He and Niamh spent their days in blissful happiness, wandering through the enchanted forests, feasting in grand halls, and dancing under the stars. Oisín found himself falling deeper in love with Niamh, her beauty and kindness unmatched by anyone he had ever known. Yet, even in the midst of this paradise, Oisín could not entirely forget the world he had left behind. At times, his thoughts would drift to the Fianna, to his father Fionn and the comrades he had fought beside for so many years. He wondered what had become of them, whether they still hunted and fought across the hills of Ireland, or whether time had taken its toll on them, as it did for all mortals. But Niamh, sensing his unease, would always be there to soothe his mind. "Do not worry for them, my love," she would say, her voice soft and reassuring. Here in Tir na Nog, we have everything we could ever need. There is no pain, no death, only happiness and love. Stay with me and you will never know sorrow again." And so, for what seemed like an eternity, Oisín lived in perfect happiness with Niamh in the land of eternal youth. Chapter 4. The Call of Home. Though Oisín's days in Tir na Nog were filled with joy, the passage of time began to weigh on him. Though he did not age or grow tired, a longing stirred within his heart, a longing for home. The memory of Ireland, with its green hills, its rivers and forests, and its people called to him in his dreams. He thought of Fionn and the Fianna, of the battles they had fought together, and the bond of brotherhood they had shared. One day, as Oisín and Niamh walked along the shores of Tir na Nog, Oisín turned to her with a troubled expression. "Niamh," he said, his voice heavy with emotion, "I cannot deny the love I have for you, nor the happiness I have found in this land. But I am a man of Ireland, and my heart yearns to see my homeland once more. I wish to visit the land of my birth, to see what has become of my father and my people." Niamh's face grew pale at his words, and for a moment she was silent. She had feared this day would come, for she knew the dangers that awaited Oisín in the mortal world. Time flowed differently in Tir na Nog, and though Oisín felt as if only a few years had passed, many centuries had gone by in Ireland. At last, Niamh spoke, her voice filled with sorrow. "If you must go, Oisín, then I cannot stop you. But know this, if you return to the mortal world, you must not set foot upon the soil of Ireland. For if you do, the years that have passed will come upon you in an instant, and you will be subject to the fate of all mortals." Oisín nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of her warning. He promised her that he would not touch the ground, that he would return to Tir na Nog as soon as he had seen his homeland once more. With a heavy heart, Niamh gave Oisín her blessing. She called for her white horse, the same steed that had brought Oisín to Tir na Nog, and placed him upon its back. "Remember, my love," she said, her eyes filled with tears. "Do not dismount, no matter what you see. Return to me, and we will live together in happiness once more." With those words, Oisín set off for Ireland, his heart filled with a mix of excitement and dread. Chapter 5. The Return to Ireland. As Oisín rode across the sea, the shimmering light of Tir na Nog fading behind him, he began to feel the weight of his decision. Though his body remained strong and youthful, his mind was filled with questions. How much time had truly passed since he had left Ireland? What had become of the Fianna, of Fionn, and the world he had once known? When Oisín finally reached the shores of Ireland, his heart sank. The land that stretched before him was unfamiliar, its hills and forests changed by the passage of time. The once vibrant landscape seemed dull and weathered, and the people he saw were strangers, their faces worn by the years. As he rode through the countryside, Oisín searched for signs of the Fianna, but there were none. The great fortresses of the warriors were gone, replaced by ruins and overgrown fields. The songs of battle and victory had faded into silence, and Oisín realized with a growing sense of dread that the world he had known was no more. In a small village, Oisín came across a group of men struggling to move a large stone. Though they were strong, their efforts were in vain, and the stone remained stubbornly in place. Seeing Oisín on his majestic horse, the men called out to him for help. Without thinking, Oisín leaned down from his horse and grasped the stone with his mighty hands. With a single movement, he lifted it from the ground and tossed it aside, the strength of the fianna still flowing through his veins. But as Oisín bent down to lift the stone, his foot touched the earth of Ireland. In that instant, the years that had passed came rushing upon him. His body, once youthful and strong, aged in the blink of an eye. His golden hair turned white, his skin wrinkled, and his limbs grew frail. The men who had watched him lift the stone now stared in horror as Oisín, the mighty warrior of the fianna, was transformed into an old man before their eyes. Oisín, now weak and bent with age, fell to the ground, his heart heavy with the weight of his fate. He had broken his promise to Niamh, and now he was subject to the same fate as all mortals. The years he had spent in Tír na nÓg had caught up with him, and there was no going back. Chapter 6. The Final Goodbye. As Oisín lay on the ground, the weight of his decision pressing down upon him, he thought of Niamh and the life they had shared in Tír na nÓg. He had known love, joy, and peace in that magical land, but now, in his final moments, he understood the cost of leaving behind the world of mortals. A sadness filled his heart, but there was also a sense of acceptance. Oisín had lived a life filled with adventure and love, and though his time in the mortal world was coming to an end, his memories of Niamh would remain with him forever. The villagers, seeing Oisín's sorrow, gathered around him, offering what comfort they could. They did not know who he was or where he had come from, but they sensed that they were witnessing the end of a great hero's journey. With his final breath, Oisín whispered Niamh's name, his heart filled with the memory of their love. And so the legend of Oisín and Niamh came to an end, a tale of love, loss, and the passage of time, leaving behind a story that would be told for generations to come. The Legend of the Morrígan. Chapter 1. The Goddess of Fate. In the ancient days of Ireland, long before the time of mortal kings and heroes, the land was ruled by forces more powerful than any sword or spear. Among these forces was the Morrígan, the goddess of war, fate, and sovereignty. She was not just one being, but a manifestation of many faces. Some saw her as a beautiful maiden, others as a fierce warrior, and still others as a terrifying crone. But no matter what form she took, the Morrígan was a force of nature, her will intertwined with the very essence of life and death. The Morrígan was one of the Tuatha De Danann, the godlike race who once ruled Ireland with their magic and wisdom. But while other members of the Tuatha De sought to guide and protect humanity, the Morrigan's domain was darker and more complex. She was the goddess who presided over battles, choosing who would live and who would die. Her voice was heard in the cries of ravens, her presence felt in the moments before the clash of swords. She was the embodiment of war, but also of transformation, for in death there was always rebirth. The Morrigan's power was feared and respected by all who knew her name. She was a goddess who could not be tamed, her loyalty bound only to fate itself. Many whispered that to see her before battle was an omen of doom, for where she walked, death followed. But the Morrigan's role in the world was not only to bring death, she also guided the souls of the fallen to their next journey, ensuring that the cycle of life continued. The Morrigan was not without compassion, but hers was a cold, distant compassion, one that saw the larger picture rather than the small details of individual lives. In her eyes, the chaos of battle was a necessary part of the natural order, and it was through the flames of war that the strongest emerged, forged like steel in the fires of conflict. It was said that the Morrígan could appear on the battlefield in many forms. A crow perched on the shoulder of a dying warrior, a maiden washing the blood-stained armor of those doomed to die, or a spectral figure wreathed in shadow. She was everywhere and nowhere, watching as the tides of fate played out in the struggles of men. Chapter 2. The Warrior's Encounter. Among the mortals who walked the lands of Ireland, there was one man whose destiny was forever linked with the Morrígan. His name was Cú Chulainn, the hero of Ulster, a warrior of unmatched strength and skill. Cú Chulainn was known throughout Ireland for his bravery, his prowess in battle, and his unyielding spirit. But even the greatest of heroes could not escape the gaze of the Morrígan. One fateful day, as Cú Chulainn rode along the banks of the River Boyne, preparing for an impending battle, he saw a figure in the distance. She stood by the water's edge, her long black hair flowing in the wind, her eyes fixed on him with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. Cú Chulainn, ever brave, approached the woman, though he could sense that she was no ordinary mortal. As he drew closer, the woman spoke, her voice low and melodic, yet filled with a dark undercurrent. "Cú Chulainn, the Hound of Ulster," she said, her eyes gleaming with knowledge that reached beyond the mortal realm. "I have come to offer you my aid in the battle to come." Cú Chulainn, though wary of her presence, did not recognize her as the Morrígan. He saw only a beautiful woman offering her support, and his pride led him to refuse. "I need no help from you, woman," he replied, his tone dismissive. "I have faced countless enemies and emerged victorious without the aid of any sorceress or goddess. I will fight this battle on my own terms." The Morrigan's expression darkened, though her voice remained calm. "You do not know who you speak to, warrior. My aid is not freely offered, but you will regret rejecting it." Cú Chulainn, still unaware of her true identity, turned his back on her and rode away, thinking nothing more of the encounter. But as the Morrígan watched him leave, her eyes narrowed with the cold fury of a goddess scorned. "You will regret this, Cú Chulainn," she whispered, her voice now filled with a dark promise. "For no man rejects the Morrígan without facing the consequences." Chapter 3. The Morrigan's Vengeance. In the days that followed, Cú Chulainn prepared for battle, unaware that the Morrígan was watching his every move, her anger simmering beneath the surface. The battle would be fierce, and though Cú Chulainn was confident in his abilities, the Morrígan had plans to test him in ways he had never imagined. As the sun rose on the day of the battle, the air was thick with tension. The opposing forces lined up on either side of the battlefield, their weapons gleaming in the light. But as Cú Chulainn prepared to ride into the fray, he noticed something strange. An eel slithering through the river near where he stood. Without warning, the eel lunged at him, wrapping itself around his legs and throwing him off balance. Cú Chulainn, though caught off guard, quickly regained his footing and struck at the creature with his spear. The eel writhed in pain and slithered back into the water, but Cú Chulainn could feel the strain in his legs where it had coiled around him. Undeterred, Cú Chulainn continued into battle, but his troubles were far from over. As the battle raged on, a wolf appeared on the battlefield, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. It snarled and lunged at Cú Chulainn, its fangs bared. Though Cú Chulainn managed to fend off the wolf with his sword, the beast's savage attack left him winded and bleeding from several bites. But the worst was yet to come. As Cú Chulainn fought his way through the enemy ranks, A cow appeared on the battlefield, charging at him with terrifying speed. The cow was enormous, its eyes burning with an unnatural fire, and Cú Chulainn barely managed to dodge its deadly horns. But as he did, the cow's hooves struck him with a force that sent him tumbling to the ground. As Cú Chulainn struggled to rise, he realized the truth. These were not ordinary animals. They were the Morrígan in disguise, come to enact her vengeance upon him for his arrogance. Though wounded and weary, Cú Chulainn fought on, determined not to let the Morrigan's interference defeat him. But he knew now that he had made a terrible mistake in rejecting her offer of aid. Her presence was everywhere, her power a constant shadow over the battlefield. In the end, Cú Chulainn emerged victorious, but it was a hard-fought battle, and he bore the scars of the Morrigan's wrath. As he lay recovering from his wounds, the memory of the goddess haunted him, and he knew that he had crossed a force far greater than any mortal foe. Chapter 4. The Washing of Armor. Though Cú Chulainn had survived the Morrigan's vengeance, his fate was far from secure. For the Morrigan, though vengeful, was also a goddess of fate, and she knew that Cú Chulainn's destiny was one of glory, but also of death. She would not intervene directly again, but she would watch, and in her way she would guide him to his inevitable end. The next time Cú Chulainn encountered the Morrigan, it was not in the form of a beautiful maiden or a terrifying beast, but in a vision far more chilling. As Cú Chulainn rode through the fields of Ulster one evening, his horse suddenly stopped, its ears pricked and its body tense. Cú Chulainn, sensing something was amiss, dismounted and looked around. There, by the riverbank, stood a figure. It was an old woman, bent and frail, her hair long and white, her clothes tattered and soaked with water. She knelt by the river, washing a suit of armor in the water, armor stained red with blood. Cú Chulainn's heart froze at the sight, for he knew what this vision meant. The old woman was the Morrigan in her guise as the washer at the ford, an omen of death. The armor she washed was his own, stained with the blood of battles yet to come. For a long moment, Cú Chulainn stood frozen, his eyes locked on the figure of the Morrigan. She did not look at him, but he could feel her gaze upon him, a silent acknowledgment of the fate that awaited him. Though he had survived many battles, he knew that his time was drawing near, and that the Morrigan, ever watchful, would be there to guide him when his end came. With a heavy heart, Cú Chulainn turned away from the river and rode on. The image of the Morrigan washing his blood-stained armor burned into his mind. Chapter 5. The Final Battle. The Morrigan's presence loomed over Cú Chulainn in the days leading up to his final battle. Though he had defied her, fought her, and survived her wrath, he could not escape the destiny that she had woven for him. As the forces of Connaught and Ulster prepared for a final, cataclysmic confrontation, Cú Chulainn knew that this would be his last stand. The Morrigan had already shown him his fate, and though he was determined to fight with every ounce of strength he had, he could feel the weight of inevitability pressing down upon him. On the morning of the battle, Cú Chulainn stood alone on the battlefield, his armor gleaming in the early light. His enemies were many, and he knew that the odds were against him, but the warrior in him would not allow him to retreat. He would face his fate head on, just as he had faced every battle before. As the battle began, Cú Chulainn fought with a fury that astonished even his enemies. He was a whirlwind of death, his spear and sword cutting through the ranks of his foes with terrifying precision. But as the battle wore on, his strength began to wane. Wounds covered his body, and the weight of his armor grew heavier with each passing moment. And then, in the midst of the chaos, he saw her, the Morrígan. She stood at the edge of the battlefield, her black cloak billowing in the wind, her raven eyes fixed on him. She did not speak, but Cú Chulainn could feel her presence, her cold, indifferent gaze watching him as he fought. With one final surge of strength, Cú Chulainn charged into the enemy ranks, determined to take as many of his foes with him as he could. But even the greatest of heroes cannot fight forever, and at last, Cú Chulainn fell. As he lay dying, the Morrígan approached him, her face serene, her eyes filled with the knowledge of the ages. She knelt beside him, her hand resting on his brow, and in that moment, Cú Chulainn understood. She had not come to take revenge, nor to gloat over his defeat. She had come to guide him, as she had guided so many before him, into the next life. With a final breath, Cú Chulainn closed his eyes, his spirit passing from the mortal world. The Morrígan stood, her face unreadable, and with a flap of her black wings, she disappeared into the sky, leaving the battlefield in silence. Chapter 6. The Cycle of Fate. The Morrigan's work was never done. Though Cú Chulainn had fallen, his legend would live on, passed down through the ages by poets and bards. The Morrígan, too, would endure, her presence felt in every battle, in every moment of conflict and change. She was not a goddess of destruction for its own sake. She was a guardian of fate, a weaver of the threads that connected life and death. She understood the balance of the world, and she played her part in ensuring that the cycle continued. Though mortals feared her, they also revered her, for without death there could be no life, and without conflict there could be no peace. The Morrígan watched as the world moved on, as new heroes rose and fell, as new battles were fought and won. She was there in the background, a silent witness to the unfolding of history. And though few ever saw her, all felt her presence, for she was fate itself, and fate was inescapable. For the Morrígan, there would always be another battle, another soul to guide, another destiny to fulfill. And so, the legend of the Morrígan lived on, a reminder that even the greatest of heroes must one day face the goddess of fate. The Enchanted Deer of Slieve Gullion. Chapter 1. The Mountain of Magic. In the heart of Ireland, among the rolling hills and mist-covered valleys, stood the majestic Slieve Gullion, a mountain shrouded in legend and mystery. The people who lived in the shadow of this towering peak spoke in hushed tones of the ancient magic that permeated the land, a magic that could be felt in the very air that swirled around the mountain's summit. Slieve Gullion was a place where the boundary between the mortal world and the other world was thin, and those who ventured too far into its depths often found themselves entangled in the ancient enchantments that lingered there. Among the many stories told about Slieve Gullion, none were more captivating than the tale of the enchanted deer. It was said that a mysterious creature, a deer unlike any other, roamed the slopes of the mountain, its silver-white fur shimmering in the moonlight like freshly fallen snow. The deer was not of the natural world, but a being of magic, tied to the ancient forces that governed the land. Some said that the deer was a spirit, a guardian of the mountain who had watched over Slieve Gullion for centuries. Others whispered that it was a cursed creature, once human, transformed into its current form by a powerful spell cast long ago. Whatever the truth, the deer had become the subject of many legends, and it was believed that anyone who saw it would be forever changed. Chapter 2. Fionn's Quest. Among the people of Ireland, none were more famed for their bravery and skill than Fionn mac Cumhail and his band of warriors, the Fianna. Fionn was a hero without equal, known for his strength, wisdom, and leadership. He had led the Fianna through countless battles and adventures, defending Ireland from invaders and ensuring that peace reigned across the land. But Fionn was not only a warrior, he was also a seeker of knowledge and magic. He knew that there were forces in the world beyond the reach of mortal men, and he often sought out these mysteries, hoping to understand the ancient powers that shaped the world. It was during one of these quests that Fionn and the Fianna found themselves near Slieve Gullion. The mountain loomed large in the distance, its peaks wreathed in mist, and the stories of the enchanted deer echoed in the minds of the warriors as they made camp at its base. Fionn, always curious and unafraid of the unknown, was drawn to the mountain's strange allure. The stories of the enchanted deer intrigued him, and he felt a deep pull to discover the truth behind the legend. One evening, as the Fianna sat around the fire sharing tales of their past adventures, Fionn spoke. "I have heard many stories of this mountain," he said, his voice thoughtful, "but none captivate me more than the tale of the enchanted deer. They say that it is no ordinary creature, but one born of magic. I wish to see it for myself." The Fianna, loyal to their leader, nodded in agreement. They had followed Fionn through many dangers, and they trusted his judgment. But some of the warriors were uneasy. The stories of Slieve Gullion were not just tales of adventure, but also of danger. Many who had ventured into the mountain's depths had never returned, and those who did spoke of strange visions and enchantments that had haunted them long after they had left. "Are you certain this is wise, Fionn?" asked Oisín, Fionn's son, and one of the greatest of the Fianna. "The mountain is said to be a place of great magic, and not all magic is kind to mortals." Fionn smiled, his eyes gleaming with the thrill of the unknown. "That is precisely why we must go, Oisín. The magic of Slieve Gullion is ancient, older than any we have encountered. If there is knowledge to be gained, we cannot turn away." And so it was decided. At dawn, Fionn and the Fianna would ascend the slopes of Slieve Gullion in search of the enchanted deer, unaware of the trials that awaited them. Chapter 3. The Hunt Begins. As the sun rose over the horizon, casting a pale light over the mist-covered land, Fionn and his warriors set off towards Slieve Gullion. The mountain loomed above them, its slopes steep and rugged, the paths winding through dense forests and rocky outcrops. The air was cool and damp, filled with the scent of earth and pine, and the call of birds echoed through the trees. For hours, the Fianna made their way up the mountain, their eyes scanning the landscape for any sign of the fabled deer. The higher they climbed, the more the world around them seemed to change. The trees grew taller, their trunks gnarled and twisted, as if shaped by ancient hands. Strange, ethereal light filtered through the branches, casting everything in an otherworldly glow. It was as if they had entered another realm entirely, a place where the laws of the mortal world no longer applied. The warriors, though seasoned in battle, could not shake the feeling that they were being watched, that something unseen was following their every move. Suddenly, a flash of silver-white fur caught Fionn's eye. His heart leaped in his chest, for there, just beyond the trees, stood the enchanted deer. Its coat gleamed like moonlight, and its antlers rose high above its head, shimmering with a faint, magical glow. The deer's eyes were deep and knowing, as if it carried within them the wisdom of the ages. Without a word, Fionn signaled to his warriors, and they began to move silently through the trees, their steps careful and measured. But as they approached the deer, something strange happened. The air around them seemed to ripple, and the world shifted. The trees swayed unnaturally, their branches stretching and curling like the fingers of a giant hand. The ground beneath their feet grew soft, as if it were no longer solid earth. And then, in a heartbeat, the deer was gone. Fionn and his warriors were left standing in a clearing that had not been there moments before. The air was thick with magic, and the ground was covered in strange, glowing plants that pulsed with a faint light. The deer had vanished, but its presence lingered, as if it had left behind a part of itself in the very fabric of the world. "We are not in the world we knew," Fionn said quietly, his voice filled with awe. "We have entered a place of enchantment." The Fianna exchanged uneasy glances. They had faced many dangers before, but this was different. The mountain itself seemed alive, its magic ancient and powerful, and they knew that they were no longer in control of their fate. Chapter 4. The Lady of the Mountain. As Fionn and his warriors stood in the enchanted clearing, a soft voice filled the air, echoing through the trees like the song of a distant wind. "Fionn Mac Cumhail," the voice called, its tone melodic and haunting. "You have entered my domain." From the shadows of the trees, a figure emerged, a woman of striking beauty and grace, her long hair the color of autumn leaves, her eyes gleaming with the light of the stars. She was clothed in a gown of shimmering green, her movements as fluid as the wind that swept through the mountain's peaks. This was Aine, the Lady of Slieve Gullion, a powerful enchantress and guardian of the mountain. She was as old as the land itself, and her magic was woven into the very stones and trees that surrounded them. It was she who had created the enchanted deer, a creature born of her magic, meant to protect the mountain from those who sought to exploit its power. The Fianna stood in awe of her, for they had never seen a being so radiant, so otherworldly. Even Fionn, who had faced gods and giants, was humbled in her presence. "I am Aine, the keeper of Slieve Gullion," she said, her voice soft but commanding. "And you, Fionn, have sought to claim the magic of this mountain. But magic is not something to be claimed. It is a force that must be respected, understood." Fionn stepped forward, his eyes meeting hers with determination. "I seek not to claim your magic, Lady Aine," he said. "I only wish to understand it. The stories of the enchanted deer drew me here, and I wish to learn the truth behind the legend." Aine smiled, though there was a sadness in her eyes. "The truth is not always what we wish it to be, Fionn Mac Cumhail. The deer you seek is not a simple creature of legend. It is tied to the fate of this mountain, and to my own fate as well." The warriors listened in silence as Aine spoke of the origins of the enchanted deer. Long ago, she had fallen in love with a mortal man, a warrior who had ventured into the mountains in search of glory. Their love was forbidden, for Aine was bound to the mountain, and her magic could not coexist with the mortal world. When the warrior was slain in battle, Aine, in her grief, used her magic to transform him into the enchanted deer so that he might live on, guarding the mountain they had once walked together. But in doing so, Áine had bound herself to the mountain as well. As long as the deer roamed, Áine could not leave Slieve Gullion. She was trapped, a prisoner of her own magic, and though she had lived for centuries, she could never again experience the love she had lost. Chapter 5. The Test of Fionn. Áine's story filled the Fianna with sorrow, for they could see the depth of her grief and the weight of the magic that had bound her. Fionn, ever the noble leader, felt a deep compassion for the enchantress, and he vowed to help her if he could. "Is there nothing that can break the spell?" Fionn asked, his voice filled with resolve. "Surely there is a way to free you from this fate." Áine hesitated for a moment, her eyes searching Fionn's face as if weighing his sincerity. Finally she spoke. "There is one way," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "but it is a path fraught with danger, and it may cost you more than you are willing to give." Fionn stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. "Tell me what must be done, and I will do it, Anne." Áine nodded, her expression solemn. "To break the spell, you must find the heart of the mountain. Deep within Slieve Gullion lies a chamber, hidden from mortal eyes, where the magic of the land is strongest. There you will find the source of the enchantment that binds the deer, and me, to this place. But be warned, Fionn mac Cumhail, the journey will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine. The mountain does not give up its secrets easily, and the forces that guard it are ancient and powerful." Fionn, undeterred by the warning, agreed to the task. He and a few of his most trusted warriors would venture into the heart of the mountain, seeking the chamber that held the key to breaking the enchantment. But the Fianna knew that this would not be a simple quest. The mountain was alive with magic, and it would not allow them to pass without a fight. Chapter 6. The Trials of the Mountain. As Fionn and his chosen warriors descended into the depths of Slieve Gullion, the air grew heavy with magic. The walls of the mountain seemed to pulse with energy, and strange glowing symbols appeared on the rocks, guiding them deeper into the heart of the mountain. The further they went, the more the world around them seemed to shift and change, as if they were no longer walking in the realm of mortals. The first trial came in the form of a great stone guardian, a massive creature made of living rock that blocked their path. Its eyes glowed with an eerie light, and it towered over the warriors, its arms as thick as tree trunks. Without hesitation, Fionn and his warriors drew their weapons, preparing to fight. The battle was fierce, and the stone guardian's strength was immense. But Fionn, with the wisdom he had gained from his years as a leader of the Fianna, knew that brute force alone would not defeat such a creature. He studied the symbols carved into the guardian's body, recognizing them as ancient runes of protection and power. With a swift motion, Fionn used his sword to strike at the symbols, breaking the flow of magic that animated the creature. The guardian crumbled into dust, and the path was clear once more. But the mountain was not done with them yet. The second trial came in the form of a whispering wind, a voice that filled their minds with doubt and fear. The wind spoke of their past failures, their deepest insecurities, and the darkness that lurked in their hearts. The warriors hesitated, their resolve wavering as the wind's words took hold. But Fionn, ever the leader, reminded them of their strength, their courage, and the bond they shared as members of the Fianna. Together they pushed through the wind, their determination unbroken. At last they reached the heart of the mountain, a vast glowing chamber filled with swirling magic. In the center of the chamber stood the enchanted deer, its silver-white fur shimmering with an otherworldly light. The deer's eyes met Fionn's, and in that moment, Fionn understood the depth of the enchantment that had bound the creature for so long. With a steady hand, Fionn approached the deer, and with a single precise strike of his sword, he shattered the enchantment. Chapter 7: Freedom and Farewell. As the magic of the mountain dissipated, the enchanted deer transformed before their eyes, reverting to its true form, a mortal man, the warrior who had once loved Áine. The chamber filled with light, and the mountain itself seemed to sigh with relief as the ancient spell was broken. Áine appeared before them, her face radiant with gratitude and sorrow. Though she was now free from the mountain's grasp, the warrior she had loved so long ago was no longer the man she had known. The passage of time had changed them both, and they knew that they could never return to the life they had shared. With a heavy heart, Áine bid farewell to the warrior, her eyes filled with tears. She turned to Fionn, her voice soft with gratitude. "You have done what no one else could, Fionn Mac Cumhail. You have freed me from the fate that bound me to this place, and for that I will be forever grateful. But the path you have walked was not without cost." Fionn nodded, understanding the weight of her words. Though he had succeeded in breaking the spell, he knew that the magic of Slieve Gullion would remain, and that the mountain would always hold its secrets close. As the Fianna made their way back down the mountain, Fionn's thoughts were heavy with the knowledge of what they had seen. The magic of the land was powerful, and it was not to be taken lightly. But even in the face of such forces, Fionn had remained true to his quest, and his name would live on in the legends of Ireland. The Tale of Diarmuid and Gráinne. Chapter 1: The Betrothal of Gráinne. In the ancient days of Ireland, when the land was still filled with magic and the exploits of heroes echoed through the hills and valleys, there lived a princess of great beauty and strength of spirit. Her name was Gráinne, the daughter of the High King of Ireland, Cormac mac Éire. Gráinne was known throughout the kingdom for her wisdom, grace, and beauty, and many suitors came to her father's court, seeking her hand in marriage. But Gráinne was not easily impressed. Though she had the appearance of a delicate maiden, her mind was sharp, and her heart fiercely independent. She had grown up listening to tales of the Fianna, the legendary band of warriors led by the great hero Fionn Mac Cumhail, and she had long dreamed of living a life filled with adventure and passion. Yet the suitors who came to her father's court were men of politics and wealth, lacking the fire and courage she admired in the warriors of the Fianna. One day her father announced that she was to be married. The chosen groom was none other than Fionn Mac Cumhail himself, now an older man but still the most respected warrior in all of Ireland. Fionn had achieved great victories in battle, and his name was known far and wide. Though many in the kingdom believed it to be a prestigious match, Gráinne was not pleased. While she respected Fionn for his valor, she did not love him, and the thought of marrying a man so much older than herself filled her with dread. Nevertheless, the betrothal feast was arranged, and Fionn, along with the warriors of the Fianna, arrived at Cormac's court. Among the Fianna was one man who caught Gráinne's eye, Diarmuid Wadwibne, a young warrior known for his unmatched beauty and skill in battle. Diarmuid was more than just a skilled warrior. He possessed a charm and gentleness that set him apart from the other warriors. His striking good looks, marked by the gaze, a magical love spot on his forehead that made him irresistible to women, only added to his allure. As Gráinne watched Diarmuid from across the banquet hall, a plan began to form in her mind. Chapter 2: The Sleeping Draught. The banquet hall was filled with music, laughter, and the clinking of goblets as the feast in honor of Gráinne's betrothal to Fionn continued late into the night. But as the celebrations wore on, Gráinne's thoughts remained with Diarmuid. Though she had only glimpsed him from afar, something about the young warrior had stirred her heart in a way that Fionn never could. Gráinne, determined to take control of her own fate, decided to act. As the guests laughed and feasted, she slipped away from the banquet and quietly brewed a sleeping draught, a potion known to cause deep slumber. Returning to the hall, she moved among the revelers, offering the drink to Fionn and the other warriors of the Fianna. One by one they drank, and soon the hall was filled with the sound of snores as the men fell into a deep sleep. Only Diarmuid remained awake, for Gráinne had deliberately passed him by, knowing that he would be key to her escape from a future she did not want. When the hall was quiet, Gráinne approached Diarmuid, her heart racing with anticipation. The young warrior looked up at her in surprise, his brow furrowing as he saw the intensity in her gaze. "Diarmuid Uadwibna," she whispered, her voice low and urgent. "I have chosen you. You must take me away from here, away from this place, and from the betrothal to Fionn." Diarmuid's eyes widened in shock. Though he had heard stories of Gráinne's beauty and intelligence, he had not expected such a bold proposition. He hesitated, knowing the consequences of defying Fionn. The leader of the Fianna was not a man to be crossed lightly, and Diarmuid knew that to steal Gráinne away would mean a life on the run, forever pursued by the wrath of Fionn and the warriors of the Fianna. "Gráinne, I cannot," Diarmuid said, his voice strained. "Fionn is my leader, my sworn brother. To betray him would be to risk everything." But Gráinne was not deterred. She stepped closer, her eyes burning with determination. "I do not love Fionn," she said firmly. "I cannot marry him. But you, Diarmuid, you have stirred something within me that I cannot ignore. I will not live a life of misery bound to a man I do not love. If you will not help me, I will go alone. But know this, my heart belongs to you now." Diarmuid's heart pounded in his chest as he looked into Gráinne's eyes. He knew that she spoke the truth, and though he feared the consequences, he could not deny the pull he felt toward her. The guise that marked his forehead, the love spot that had caused so many women to fall for him, now bound him to Gráinne in a way that was deeper than mere attraction. It was as if fate itself had brought them together. With a heavy sigh, Diarmuid nodded. "I will help you, Gráinne. We will leave tonight." And so, under the cover of darkness, Diarmuid and Gráinne fled from the court of Cormac mac Air, leaving behind the sleeping warriors of the Fianna, and setting off on a journey that would change their lives forever. Chapter 3: The Flight from Fionn. The night was cool and still as Diarmuid and Gráinne made their way through the forests of Ireland, their footsteps silent on the soft earth. Though they moved swiftly, the weight of what they had done hung heavy over them both. They knew that once Fionn awoke and discovered their betrayal, he would stop at nothing to hunt them down. As the days passed, Diarmuid and Gráinne travelled farther from Cormac's court, seeking refuge in the remote forests and mountains. They moved from place to place, never staying long in one spot, always wary of the Fianna's pursuit. But no matter how far they travelled, the threat of Fionn's vengeance loomed over them. Diarmuid, ever the protector, took it upon himself to ensure Gráinne's safety. He used his skills as a warrior and a hunter to keep them hidden, setting traps for any who might come after them and scouting the land for potential dangers. Though they were on the run, Diarmuid found himself growing closer to Gráinne with each passing day. Her strength, her intelligence, and her unyielding spirit captivated him in a way that no woman ever had. But despite their growing bond, Diarmuid could not shake the guilt that gnawed at him. He had betrayed Fionn, the man who had raised him and treated him like a son. The Fianna were his brothers, and now he was their enemy. Though Diarmuid had chosen to follow his heart, the weight of that choice pressed down on him like a heavy stone. Gráinne, sensing Diarmuid's inner turmoil, sought to ease his burden. "You have done nothing wrong, Diarmuid," she told him one night as they sat by the fire. "I chose you, and you chose me. We cannot help who we love. Fionn may be your leader, but that does not mean you must sacrifice your happiness for him." Diarmuid nodded, though he remained silent. He knew that Gráinne was right, but the guilt still lingered in his heart. And so they continued their journey, always looking over their shoulders, always fearing the day when Fionn would finally catch up to them. Chapter 4. The Hiding Places. For many months, Diarmuid and Gráinne wandered the wilds of Ireland, moving from one hiding place to another. They found shelter in the caves of Benbulben, in the forests of Connaught, and in the remote valleys of Kerry. Everywhere they went, they left little trace of their presence, hoping to stay one step ahead of Fionn and the Fianna. But Fionn was relentless in his pursuit. His love for Gráinne had turned to anger and bitterness, and he vowed to bring Diarmuid to justice for his betrayal. He sent his best warriors to track the couple, following their trail across the country. Each time they grew close, Diarmuid's cunning and knowledge of the land allowed him and Gráinne to escape. But the strain of being constantly on the run began to take its toll. Gráinne, though strong in spirit, grew weary of the constant fear and uncertainty. She longed for a life of peace, free from the shadows of pursuit. Diarmuid, too, felt the weight of their situation, but he remained determined to protect Gráinne at all costs. One night, as they rested in a hidden cave beneath the mountains, Gráinne turned to Diarmuid, her voice filled with exhaustion. "How long must we live like this, Diarmuid?" she asked. "Always running, always hiding. Will we never find a place where we can be safe?" Diarmuid's heart ached at the sight of her weariness, but he knew that there was no easy answer. As long as Fionn lived, they would never be free from his pursuit. "We will find a way, Gráinne," Diarmuid said, his voice steady. "I do not know how long it will take, but I promise you, I will never let harm come to you." Gráinne smiled, though there was sadness in her eyes. She knew that Diarmuid's vow was sincere, but she also knew that their love had come at a great cost. The life they had dreamed of seemed ever out of reach, and the shadow of Fionn's vengeance loomed larger with each passing day. Chapter 5. The Death of Diarmuid. For years, Diarmuid and Gráinne evaded Fionn's pursuit, always staying one step ahead of the Fianna. But fate is a force that cannot be escaped, and eventually their luck ran out. One day, as they made their way through the forests of Sligo, Diarmuid encountered a great wild boar, a creature of immense size and ferocity. Diarmuid, though a skilled warrior, had been placed under a geas, a magical prohibition that he must never hunt a boar. But in the heat of the moment, with the beast threatening Gráinne, Diarmuid had no choice but to face it. The battle between Diarmuid and the boar was fierce and brutal. Though Diarmuid fought valiantly, the boar's strength was overwhelming. With a final deadly charge, the boar gored Diarmuid with its tusks, leaving him gravely wounded. As Diarmuid lay dying, Gráinne wept at his side, her heart breaking for the man she had loved so deeply. She called out for help, and it was then that Fionn and the Fianna arrived. Fionn, seeing Diarmuid's condition, was faced with a choice. As a great warrior and healer, Fionn possessed the power to save Diarmuid's life by allowing him to drink from a nearby spring. But the bitterness of betrayal still burned in Fionn's heart, and he hesitated. Twice, Fionn allowed the water to slip through his fingers before finally offering it to Diarmuid. But by then, it was too late. Diarmuid, the brave and noble warrior, had succumbed to his wounds. Gráinne's cries of sorrow echoed through the forest as she mourned the loss of the man she had given her heart to. Though Fionn had come to regret his hesitation, the damage was done, and Diarmuid was lost. Chapter 6. The Legacy of Diarmuid and Gráinne. The death of Diarmuid left Gráinne heartbroken, and the love she had once felt for Fionn was now replaced by bitterness and anger. She had chosen her path, and though it had ended in tragedy, she did not regret the love she had shared with Diarmuid. For the rest of her days, Gráinne lived in quiet mourning, but the story of her love for Diarmuid lived on. It became a tale of passion, betrayal, and sacrifice, a reminder that love, though powerful, often comes at a great cost. Fionn, too, was forever changed by the events. Though he remained the leader of the Fianna, his heart was heavy with the weight of his decisions. The love triangle between Fionn, Diarmuid, and Gráinne became one of the most famous legends of Ireland, a story passed down through the generations, a testament to the complexities of love and loyalty. And so the tale of Diarmuid and Gráinne became immortal, a tragic love story that would be told for centuries to come, capturing the hearts of all who heard it.